morning. Good morning. Okay, one more time. Good morning. Good morning. All right. Welcome. I call everything. I'm so happy you can all join us. We have a very full room. Is this better? Yes. Okay. You can hear me now. Yes. We have a very full room again. So let me start off with a big thank you to everybody, because as you see, the room is very full. So I've started just this month a second seminar series each month on the same topic, because we used to have 2 more tables here for a total of 80 people, which got really crowded. So we're going to do 2 seminars each month, same topic. The second one will be on the 3rd Wednesday of each month. So second Tuesday now, 3rd Wednesday is the second one. So when you register, if you register online, you will see 2 dates. So pick one, whatever works for you. Okay, so thank you all for coming. My name is Terry Diamond. I'm your host. We have a lot of new people. Raise your hand. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Everybody take out their phones. Turn them off. Especially my presenters. If you need the restrooms, they're located out the door to the right. We talked about the second seminar. We're going to try it for a couple of months, see how it goes. So at this point, it looks like it's going to be very successful. On today's table, on the table today, you're going to find your notes for your binder. And then also at the bottom, you're going to find a survey. There's a couple of new questions on there. Make sure that you fill it out, and I do a drawing from all the surveys that I get back for a $50 gift card. So please be brutally honest. Tell me what you need, tell me what you want, tell me what you didn't get, because it only serves to make our seminars better. On there, the question, would you like to have a coffee date with me? Always a question. You write down yes or no. If you say yes, I'll give you a call. We'll have coffee or breakfast or lunch or cocktails, whatever works for you. And we talk about whatever you want. We can talk about real estate, we can talk about trust, we can talk about senior housing, and we can always talk about Loki, my dog. So, don't forget that. Loki's one of my favorite subjects, so. Today's goal is education. Specifically, we're going to talk about senior housing communities. We split it up into 2 parts this year. We're doing 6 beds or residential care facilities for the elderly, otherwise known as RCFE, because that's a mouthful. And we're going to talk about assisted living and independent living. And then next month, we're going to talk about CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities. Who doesn't know the difference? Okay, really briefly, the difference between CCRCs and the rest of them are CCRCs have all disciplines. They have independent living, they have assisted living, they have memory care, and they have skilled nursing. And there are so many communities within the town that specialize in either all of them, one of them, or a couple of them. So you have options. I'm honored today to have special guests on our panel. We have the lovely and beautiful Katerina Marcellin. She is the founder and administrator of several 6-bed RCFEs, residential care communities. 6-bed residential for facilities for elderly, as well as an elder consultant for Santa Barbara senior living consultants. She has extensive experience in geriatric care management, in dementia management, in physical and emotional care, and also palliative and end-of-life care. So she's an excellent speaker for our panel today. She has 2 children, 1 and 4, and her husband. So on top of all she does for the senior community, she has her family, which she adores and loves and spends lots of time with. So we're all busy, and she is like extraordinarily busy. We also have 2 special guests from Woodland Senior Living Community. Rick Olds, raise your hand. Rick is the Executive Director of Woodland Senior Living and owner of Helping Hands, which is a care management company. He has 15 years of leadership experience. He's worked in 3 different communities, all the way ranging from big corporate ones to the boutique nonprofit one known as Woodland. And I hear he's an excellent tennis player. I don't know about pickleball. And then Holly, raise your hand. Holly is also from Woodland. She was the listings activity director for 11 years, and now she's the sales manager over there for 4 years. She loves cats and family and, Irish dancing. She's just passionate about working for the nonprofits such as Woodland, so I'm very happy that they're all here. So they'll be working with a presentation. Peggy Ranker was going to be here this afternoon too, but she had some stuff come up. But Katerina is going to address Santa Barbara Senior Living Consultants and what they can do for our community. Before I turn things over, with all the new people here, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. Okay, my name is Terry Diamond. My day job is I'm a realtor with Berkshire Hathaway. But my passion is working with seniors and doing these seminars. It's my way of giving back. This is my legacy. I'm more than a realtor, I'm a certified senior housing professional. I'm one of just a handful, I think there are 8 of us in the entire state, which really speaks to my care and love for working with seniors through the education that I've received, through the work that I do. I focus on working with seniors and their families and selling the homes later in life, because it's not an easy thing. It's not a 1-page contract like it used to be. It's like 37 pages, and I work with a team of trusted professionals, such as my friends over here, in making sure everything goes smoothly. I know these transitions can be emotional and overwhelming, so it's my job really to guide you through that in the easiest way we can. Not a sales presentation, once again, I'm not sure if I remember that or if I mentioned that. Any questions so far? We're going to go through our presentations. We'll have time for questions and answers after we finish up. And thank you for being here. Katerina, my dear, you are up.
Thank you so much, Terry. Good morning, everybody. It's truly an honor to present today, and I first wanted to thank Terry for creating such a wonderful opportunity for us to connect and to learn from each other. I love the expression, build it and they will come. And here you are, 2 seminars in 1 month, and the whole thing is full, so it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you to you.
Thank you. So I'm here to talk about 6 bed board and care facilities, and just to tell you a little bit about my background or how I started. I began as a direct care provider, first for a facility where I provided direct care to our residents, and then when the facility owner administrator had retired, they asked me to take over their 6-bed facility. And that's the first one. That was called Casa San Miguel on the Mesa, and I'm forever grateful for those mentors that had me to sent me to this fantastic field that I'm absolutely passionate about. And first, before I start with the 6-bed facilities, I wanted to ask, have any of you have heard of being at one of those board and care 6-bed facilities? Okay.
It's around the corner from where I live.
Okay, very good. So it's really, so we have maybe 5% of the audience who have been or at one of the locations or heard of this. And it's pretty common whenever, for example, we have a tour, I always ask, the first question is, have you been at a 6-bed board and care facility? And oftentimes the answer is no, and oftentimes is, oh, I've been passing by this street and I haven't even had an idea this was a licensed facility. So My journey started when I took on Casa San Miguel, and that was 15 years ago. And since then, I opened 7 licensed board care facilities in Santa Barbara, Montecito, and Goleta area. And I really feel passionate about it because I feel that everybody's dream and hope is to age in place and to age at home environment, where you live, where you spend years of your life. But oftentimes that objective, that goal, that dream might not be attainable for different reasons. Maybe because your house might not be accessible, maybe there's many stairs, and or maybe it's because the level of care that a person requiring at a home care setting becomes so great that now they might need around-the-clock private duty care, which will become the most expensive avenue. If you hire a licensed agency, in-home care costs around $45 to $50 an hour with 4-hour minimum. So in-home care around the clock would add to about $40,000 to $50,000 a month, right? So if you age in your home, but then if you're able to find wonderful private living duty, that is another possibility. However, if a person is overwhelmed and saying, no, this is just too much to deal with, the 6-bed environment becomes that alternative, where you are in a home care setting, you are not in an institutional environment. It looks like a house, it is a home, but it is licensed for care for the resident that will have a maximum capacity of 6 residents per home, right? So in my definition, I said that RCFP, residential care facility, also known as a 6-bed facility or boarded care facility, is often located in a residential zoning area, and it is likely a former private residence that has been converted into the boarding care facility, and it is licensed by the Department of Social Services. So we have a pretty extensive policy of it's Title 22 that we need to follow, much like larger communities as well. You'll hear from Rick and Holly, and that Title 22 applies to larger facilities as well. So we have to follow that same protocol and expectations from the state, from the Department of Social Services and Fire Department, as the larger communities do. For that reason, just for the gigs I brought you, just to demonstrate what it takes to license a home, the amount of paperwork. So this was one of my recent, in 2019, we licensed Casa Santa Cita and Montecito, and that's how much it takes, all the different paperwork and clearances that one has to obtain to license a facility. And general duration of the time is about 6 to 12 months before the home gets licensed. You have to retrofit it, you need to make sure you meet all the fire code requirements, and then the fire department gives you the clearance, and then the Department of Social Services come as well. The reason I'm telling you all of this is because unfortunately, and you'll see this later in the presentation, we have lost a lot of 6-bed boarding care facilities in the last 10 years. So we had about 10 years ago, had about 40 licensed boarding care homes like what I managed, and during the COVID and in that time, we lost about 10 facilities, and at this point, the total number shrank to only 21. And I'm sharing that with you because not only that we know about, not have that awareness about 6 beds, but a lot of them had closed during the COVID time. It's unfortunate because now it's hard for me to say no to the families who come and serve because we don't have another alternative that if they wish to stay in a small environment to offer. And that is my other hat. I wanted to mention that 4 years ago, Peggy, with Senior Living Consultants, had asked me to join her team to provide LDK consulting. And I'm briefly going to share with you what that means. On your tables, you have this brochure that summarizes the services that we offer through Senior Living Consultants, and it is a free service that if the families need to navigate, like Terry said, you can come and talk to Terry, but you can also come and talk to us. If you need to learn more about what are the different types of communities, who has vacancies, who has, what kind of services they offer. We basically Peggy and I work with the families in need of placement, but also as an elder care consultant, I come to the families at their home and learn more about their needs at home, because I have been fortunate to be in this line of work as a founder and owner of 6-bed facilities, where I know how to make a house accessible. I know what to look for in terms of fall prevention measures, what additional services you might utilize at your home from the outside of our wonderful supportive community. We are fortunate to have a number of organizations that could bring additional supportive services to you. And that's where I meet with the families, we discuss what their greatest needs are, and I play a role of a community liaison, a consultant, to fill those gaps the best we can. So that's my other hat. And then my most favorite hat is I'm a mom, and I started my parenting journey late in life, and I'm so grateful that I have two little ones, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and that's how Terry mentioned I balance my life at this time. But I always say, please do use me as a resource, take my brain, because there is a lot of information that I'd be glad to share, and a lot of it is really hard to sometimes navigate, because this is the time when the families reach to us. They're at the time of crisis. Oftentimes, as the adult children, you have elderly parents who are experiencing a change of condition, and now you need to see, what to do next. How do we accommodate their needs, and how we create a more sustainable long-term plan of care for the parents. So shifting back to the 6-bed facilities, so what's interesting is the types of licensing and clearances that could be obtained by a 6-bed administrator. So administrator decides when they license in the home what types of services they want to include or exclude from their package of services. And because I've been so blessed to be mentored by my wonderful family, their focus was the continuity of care. So they said, Katerina, when you apply with Department of Social Services for your permits, go for everything. And so what does that mean? In the summary, it says that you can get a clearance for ambulatory care, non-ambulatory, bedridden care, dementia care, and then hospice care. So that means that if a person declines physically, he or she might start independently with a walker, then become wheelchair bound, then become bed bound, or he or she declines cognitively with different types and levels of dementia. We're able to provide that continuity of care. So the goal is for our residents to age in place and then shift to the end-of-life hospice services. So that's kind of the program philosophy, and how when you tour 6-bed facility, it's important to ask, what kind of clearances do you have? You might not have a certain, for example, we have a couple of facilities that generally take more higher functional residents, or some might shy away from dementia care. So it's important to ask those questions at the time of the tour. Another thing that's important to mention is that what 6-bed facilities cannot do. So there is appropriate expectations. 6-bed facilities are non-skilled nursing care. So we cannot provide any form of IV therapy, IV hydration, IV antibiotics, any injections. In a rare case when we admit that we had once a diabetic patient, we were able to contract with the home care, home health agency that was able to administer insulin. But typically in the case of insulin-dependent resident, they will need to self-administer or have a family member administer. And that in general is a huge gap in our community to hear and help residents of rather elderly with insulin dependency. Another thing that we cannot do is gastrostomy and nasogastric tubes, so anything that's going through, urine feeding tubes, we cannot do that. However, we can do provide care for residents with ostomy and ileostomy bags. So that we can do, and we can do Foley catheter and suprapubic catheter. That we can do. When a person develops a pressure sore, stage 3 and 4 ulcers is prohibited under our care. So those are the restrictions, and that is a big part of the assessment. when we meet prospective families, we go over the list of questions, so we're making sure that we're not taking on more than we can provide. But we still can provide pretty extensive level of care. When a person becomes, for example, bedridden, requiring around-the-clock bed care, repositioning every 2 hours, needing oxygen, needing suction machines, there's a lot of things I can touch on the end-of-life care, but that is definitely what we can do in a small 6-bed environment. So that is, and then we can only take on somebody who develops a contagious and dangerous disease such as staph, MRSA, or C. diff. For that time frame, they must be discharged into a skilled nursing facility, get treated, cleared, and then come back after that. So that's, and even that, oftentimes, where does our residents come from? The discharges from College Hospital. For example, if a hospital bed cannot place a resident in a skilled nursing facility, they reach out to us. I work with a number of social workers from College Hospital where, again, the need is, and I'll touch on that too, is getting greater in regards to the skilled nursing beds. And it's interesting, it is 6-bed facilities now that are now taking on that gap and tend to provide care for more higher acuity level of care residents than they used to be before. And then who can operate a 6-bed facility and how? So I mentioned the fire clearances. Basically, you get a license for the facility, and you as a facility administrator must have your own license. So we get so many hours of training with Department of Social Services. We need to pass a state exam and then go through the fingerprint clearance, medical clearance, and then we obtain our license as administrator, and then renewed every 2 years. So it's quite involved, and that's why for a family to start a 6-bed, it becomes, quite overwhelming, especially lately. I think that I attribute the fact that so many facilities has closed also is related to the incredibly high and recent increase of cost of living. So who are the 6-bed administrators in our community? Typically you have a group of Slavic administrators like myself, or Filipino families that manage 6-bed facilities. Oftentimes because this is the culture that we grew up in, to take care of our elderly, and because also it takes a village to really operate and have a good support system to manage a boarding care home. Oftentimes you're there all the time. My phone does not stop, but I cannot take the credit of solo because my brother, who is my co-administrator, has been incredible in making this journey for us happen. And I did mention that we did downsize to just 4 facilities, as you see in my brochure. This is the brochure that looks like this. And that was a decision that we made because I was planning to have a family, and it was important for me not to cut any corners. And so the facilities that I managed really chose a few of our lead caretakers that took on our former facilities. So it was a good opportunity for them, and also the fact that we didn't have to shut down what was already serving the purpose. In terms of, so that is who and how can operate a 6-bed facility. I wanted to also tell you what is important to know about when you bring a resident to the facility, how does that process work? So for example, and that is very similar to what you will hear from Rick as well. So the tour is set up to see a facility originally, and then we come to do the assessment of our prospective family member resident. And I'm trying to be very much attuned to the needs of the residents to understand what their preferences are, what their goals in care, and be very honest and if I'm a good fit for them or not. So that segues this conversation towards what are the strengths and weaknesses of a 6-bed facility. So generally, if we start with weaknesses, the 6-bed facility does not offer the same activity and socialization as larger communities do, right? Because you have a smaller pool of residents to socialize with. If a few of them might have dementia, that shrinks that social circle significantly. However, and then the other weakness I'd say is the room sizes. Generally, because you have pretty much a situation where you license the residential house to serve this need. You are in a home that is 5 to 6 bedrooms. You don't have all the bedrooms with private bathrooms. The rooms are average size rooms, and that's what you kind of have to work with. So that is a limitation of the kind of our parameters with what we work with. I've been fortunate that a couple of our properties, Casa San Miguel has 8 bedrooms, Santa Isidro has 7, and most of them private bathrooms in each. And Salisbury has 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms. We completely build it according to that need of having the private bathrooms in each room. However, you want to assess if that, to make sure this is a good fit, but keep in mind the strength of a 6-bed facility. The strength, generally, if you have a person who is a high fall risk, and he or she has some form of dementia and might be easily get lost, the small environment works for that setting. And then if you have an elderly who needs more assistance with their care needs, for example, they need hands-on care with most activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, grooming, toileting. One of the biggest strengths of 6-bed facilities is our caregiver to resident ratio, right? So we have 2 caregivers for 6 residents, while in the larger communities where the residents are more independent, I think it's about 1 to 6, 10.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 per shift.
Yeah. So you'll see that shift, that difference in the resident ratio, in the fall prevention. 6 beds tend to do a great job with more frail elderly, right? So at that point, your focus and need is not so much on the ongoing activities around the clock as making sure mom is well cared for. She has the same caretakers, the familiarity with the staff, familiarity with the environment, and then continuity of that care. And then the quick response time. So we don't have to wait 30 minutes. Sometimes I hear stories where one of the reasons some discharges come from larger communities to us is that having to wait so long before somebody comes, or having difficulties with communication to management. This is wonderful with your community because you go straight to RIC, but in some, especially corporate structures where you have a lack of two-way communication. You put in a request and you never know when you get that answer. So that is the frustration I oftentimes hear when families want to move their loved ones from a larger community to ours. But when I come, when I do the assessment and I see the person, for example, is more high functional, they're social, that's when I say I might not be the best fit for you this time. You might benefit from more independent living, assisted living communities. This is the conversation I just had with one of the family members who I said, they were contemplating going, with a smaller setting, or at that point they toured Moravia, and I said, you should probably go in Moravia at this point. It's just more appropriate for your mom. So you always try to attune to that need to make sure it's a good fit for the resident, and that's important when you tour 6-bed facilities. Look at the current resident mix there as well, because we have currently a mix of dementia, no dementia resident in each facility, but there is one called Casa Beaumont. It's a dedicated advanced dementia place where we have, stage 7 Alzheimer's, nonverbal, aphasia residents. So when I have only one opening and the family says, I want to take this, I said, no, it's not going to be the right fit for your mom. Mom is still social, she needs to communicate with her peers. I cannot, take her to a facility that has more dedicated advanced dementia. So when you tour, when you tour the facilities, please look into that. Resident mix, look also at the staff, make sure that you talk about how long they have been with the facility. And what I have done also, just for some help, so this is a summary of helpful questions to ask during the facility tour. Please take a look at that, because families sometimes forget to ask things like, what is your caregiver to resident ratio? What is your fall prevention program? What is your retention rate? This is important. Also, important financial questions that needs to be discussed when you are touring the facility. Quickly, before we run out of time on the financial part of it, it is quite a myth that sometimes families think that 6-bed facilities are less expensive than larger communities. They're just about the same price as bigger communities. So I would say currently in Santa Barbara, Goleta areas, the average cost for care in 6-bed facility would be anywhere between $8,000 to $10,000 a month, which is about what you will pay in a larger community. The reason that the cost is not less expensive than larger communities is because 6 beds at this point are taking on a higher level of care residents. And for that reason, the average duration, unfortunately, with our residents is about 2 to 3 years before they transition, and that's the only time when we have our next opening. We can have more questions later, right, Terry? Is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's your question.
So I just wanted to give a quick overview, so and we'll go over the questions later. Thank you.
I know that was a really quick overview. You have your notes. There's lots of great information on there. Also on the table, we only put out a few brochures, but we have more. If you have more questions, and Katarina will be here after for one-on-ones if you have more questions. Okay, next. Come on, you're skinny. Come on out. Rick Holtz, Executive Director of Woodland Senior Living Community. I've known Rick for many years throughout the different communities, and I hooked up with him again recently at Woodland. It was great to see him, and I'm very pleased that he's here today to talk about independent and assisted living. Ready? Okay.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you here. It's really an honor to be here, and thank you, Terry, for setting this up. Got a full house. That's awesome. Just to give you a little bit of information about me, sort of my journey. I know as you look for yourself or your loved one, for a place for them as they're aging, there's all kinds of questions. There's all kinds of pressures and everything. So I want to let you know that between myself and Katarina and Holly and Terry, we're all resources for you. So please remember that. And when you get specific issues later, please feel free to reach out to any of us. My situation is a little different in the sense that I had nothing to do with home care back in 2010. And then my mom got sick. She actually got diagnosed with dementia. So it was a transition in a hurry, and it was a situation where I had a big family. We were helping her, but it really wasn't enough, and it sort of organically led me to create a company called Helping Hands, which is an in-home care agency that I still own today. But I think uniquely my experience in that, and then also now being involved directly as the executive director at Woodland, which is a beautiful nonprofit community here in Santa Barbara, and then also my experience with 2 other communities that I managed, one of which that had memory care. So I have a lot of unique sort of experience I know what it's like to be sitting where you are probably, and so I just want to try to share what I can about that. Now today we're not going to discuss memory care, we're going to focus on independent living and assisted living. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, when you think about independent living, and this kind of goes for everybody, when you need to understand what is your current situation, what kind of quality of life are you looking for, or better put, maybe what are lifestyle considerations. So independent living, you're typically talking about people that they're starting to age, but actually national statistics say that the common independent living people are from 55 to 70. which is interesting. I think Santa Barbara, we're a little bit blessed. I think there's something in the water, because at Woodglen we have 3 centenarians that are still going strong, and they're over 100. So you know, you don't really know, but that's kind of what statistics tell you. Let's see, some benefits of being in an independent community. It's really that you have the freedom to make decisions for yourself. You're able to, and a lot of this kind of has to do with your situation. A lot of independent residents are able to drive. They're going back and forth. They've moved out of their house, and so they're not worrying about, you know, I gotta cut the grass, I gotta pay the electric bill, all these kind of things that you have. But it is a transition, you know, and I understand that. So there's a lot of questions and things that people are gonna have. And I think if you're touring a community that is an independent community, and there's quite a few in Santa Barbara, you know, my experience right now is at Woodglen, but there are, you know, certainly other independent communities. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for a situation where you're close to the downtown area, if you want to live in Santa Barbara and you're still real active and you're walking? So location might be real important. Or, you know, over at Woodglen and some of the other communities that are more hillside communities, like we have a walking path that goes around it, and we're on 4 acres. So there's a lot of area and niceness about it. So that is something to certainly, you know, consider. What are you really looking for? One of the big advantage of independent living is what we call social engagement, and it's really the activities that you have and the opportunity to be with a lot of people of common age, sharing outings, we have something called chair volleyball, if you can believe it. But these residents just love it, and they are so into it. They're sitting in their chairs, they're popping the volleyball, bam, you know. It's I think they pull me in there once in a while. They try to, you know, take out their frustrations on me, I think. But anyway, it's really fun, you know. And it depends. And in independent communities, you have a lot of those types of options. Typically, and this is kind of similar to something that Katarina touched on, the cost. The cost in an independent community is typically less. And the reason primarily is because you are still, even though you're not in your home, you're still more independent. Maybe the meals are served for you. You go to the dining room 3 times a day, and maybe there's a housekeeper comes once a week. There's laundry service, that kind of stuff. But you know, you could still go and experience a lot of things yourself. You don't have direct care necessarily. So, you know, in other words, you know, you're pretty self-sufficient. Typically in independent living, for example, there's nobody to do your medication management or to help you, assist you getting dressed in the morning, all those kinds of things. So that's kind of a downside. So it depends on where you are in the spectrum, and I would analyze kind of where am I right now, and where do I think, or when I say you, it could be you, it could be a loved one, but what does 5 years look like? Is this a place I want to live in and then move somewhere, or is this a place that I want to, you know, this is going to be my home, you know, for the rest of my, you know, my time? Okay, and then kind of, it's interesting, so I use this expression, actually, Holly's my sales and marketing person, and we started using this expression when we were talking about a lot of what Woodglen has been in the past, and that is kind of active assisted. So independent living kind of can be active assisted in a sense too, because, you know, when you're active, you have, you know, you don't have care needs, but you also, you don't really have worries about having to, like, am I gonna fall, am I gonna do all these things? So you have to be a little bit understanding of your situation and not. And then there are communities that are both assisted living and independent. So in a situation like that, this is really something that's important to you too. Can you age in place here? In other words, like, let's say this is where I want to be, but now I need more assistance. Is this community going to be able to handle that? You know, I live out by the university, and there's a place out there called Friendship Manor. And I know some people that live there, and they're very, in fact, my neighbor moved in there, and she was like 90, and she moved in there, but which is amazing, but she's very active. But typically people that are there are, they're independent enough because there's not really a care structure. So that could be something that, or a place like that, I'm just familiar with that one, that's why I picked it out, but where the cost could be good for you, and maybe it is a good place now, but you have to think, like, if you're gonna need care later on, then you're either gonna have to bring in a care agency, like somebody like Helping Hands or Love and Care or somebody like that, or you're gonna have to move to another place. And I haven't had to use my glasses yet. How about that? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the specific benefits of assisted living. And really, this is something that as an administrator, when I got to Wood Glen, I'd been administrators at two different communities which have higher, basically what we call high acuity capability, kind of what Katarina was talking about in her presentation, people that have more needs. Really, Wood Glen and most RCFEs are what we call social models. So they're not really designed for really high medical capabilities. However, what I discovered at Wood Glen in particular was that we have a fantastic care team with really experienced caregivers that have been working there for a really long time. And I'm thinking, why is it that we don't offer some of the higher level of care? If somebody's, let's say they don't have dementia, but maybe they need help getting in the shower, they need help dressing every day. And one of the things that I noticed was we didn't have really accessible showers. So we actually designed some walk-in showers that anybody can go into. You could be in a wheelchair and go in. So I think when you are touring, you need to understand, you need to look at the shower capability, the room itself, not just the community. I mean, I want you to look at the common areas too, and I want you to think about it like the apartment might be your room, but the community is your home. So think about, would I access all this, or would my mom, would she like it here? What does she like to do? Do they have those kind of things? Those are all kind of questions that you need to ask. But I think one of the things that I've noticed is with us adding the additional capability, suddenly we have a wider scope. And I'm not really trying to sell you on Wood Glen because we are full with a waiting list, but you could still put your name on the waiting list. I'm sure Holly would take it from you. But What I'm saying is these are things you have to ask. These are questions you need to understand. What is the capability of my loved one right now? Are they going to be able to be by themselves? Can they manage their meds? Do they need help managing their meds? Can they get up in the morning? Do they need help dressing? Are they incontinent? All those kind of things. And you have to get a feel for the community, the nursing staff, all of that, and then the activities, and of course, the food. Don't ever forget to ask about the food. Everybody, that's probably the single thing, so we have these meetings called Chef's Corner, and we have them every month, and our chef basically, he takes all of these suggestions. We have suggestions that people are dropping in all the time, and we review all of those. So when you go to communities, ask them, because nobody's going to be perfect, and especially with food. One of the funny things is, one of the first meetings I was in at Chef's Corner, he was talking about he has likes and dislikes. Okay, in the likes, I love your enchiladas. And then he's all, okay. In the dislikes, I can't stand your enchiladas. So, it's hard to please everybody. But, get a feel for what you're looking for. And for a community that's willing to work with you is important, definitely. So, the primary things to consider, how are we doing on time? Okay, good, because I could talk forever about this stuff. So, a couple of things to consider when you go in. So, can you age in place at this community? In other words, do they offer, maybe you come in independent, like you can still, maybe you don't drive, but you still walk really well, or your loved one does, and they currently do maybe they're at home and they're doing everything for themselves right now. And then maybe the driving is kind of the last thing as the kid that you took away. That's what we did with my mom. It was not that fun, but that's a question, So you take that, away, but they still can do everything else. So you say, well, I want them to be in a vibrant social community. There's a lot of RCFEs that are just that here in Santa Barbara. So you bring her there, but then the question is, what level of care can they handle? If she needs, like a lot of times what happens is somebody will come and they'll tour with Holly, and they'll say, oh, this is so great, I really want to move in, but I'm just, my mom, and the kids are like, yeah, move in. And then the parents the actual resident is like, but I'm still able to do my own thing, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go back home, but I love this place, and I'll be back in touch. And then they go back home and they slip and fall, and they break a hip, and now they're in skilled nursing. And so that opportunity to move into an assisted living community is, it may never happen again. Maybe they'll recover, but maybe they won't. And so I ask you all to think about your individual situations and try to be somewhat proactive. And I know that's hard to do because you're feeling like where I am today, but try to be a little proactive, because it's funny, we have some residents that didn't want to come in to a community, and now that they're there, their family tells me they've completely turned around because they really have gotten into the community. And so they're really part of something. And I think that's important, that socialization. It can't be, important enough to think about. And the fact is, find out about, do they have a resident council? Okay, that sounds kind of silly, but the reality is, communities that have a strong resident council, in other words, they have a president, they have another person involved, maybe it's a secretary. They have meetings all the time, and they ask, for example, they ask me to come in, but it's not my meeting. It's their meeting. I'm just there on their behalf to hear what they like, what they don't like, what they'd like to see, what kind of programs do we not have that they want to see, that their mom would want to see. And sometimes we get family members that come and give their input, and that's kind of how you can make change. And I love that as an executive director, because then you kind of know, okay, I'm hitting this, or we're really missing here and we really need to improve it. So I think that's a question to ask. And then of course, so everybody wants to know how expensive things are. Well, things are expensive and they're getting more expensive, as we all kind of feel. But one of the things, and I have a sort of a unique insight in this because I do, as I mentioned, own a home care company. So think about if your mom's at home. Uh-oh, am I losing one?
Excuse me, I have a previous report.
Okay. Nobody else leave, please, because I'll start crying, yeah. Did we meet before? You must have known me or something. I'm just kidding. What was I talking about? So, cost. Yes, everybody remembers that part. So, one of the things to calculate, let's say you're at home right now, or your loved one's at home, and how much are the fixed costs, being things like, your electricity, your mortgage if you have it, your rent if you have that instead, and all just the actual costs. But then on top of that, think about, well, mom needs a little bit of help, so we have some care coming by, and maybe that's working good for you. But maybe if you think about it, at some point, they may need a lot of care. And when that happens, like when they go on to needing, like what Katarina was mentioning, people need 24/7 care. They need, and that's great, but it's real expensive. We're talking $35,000 a month type of expensive, and some people even charge more. So it's a lot of money. So think about that and compare that cost to a community where, we have, there's prices anywhere from, $5K and up in Santa Barbara. I don't know that there's anything less than that. There might be, but in that range. And then you gotta, on top of that, think about care costs and such. But it isn't as daunting as you might think if you think about what the alternative is. So those are kind of the main thing, and I just want to leave you with, think about a value proposition. Think about, this is what this community offers, and write down a list. You know your loved ones or yourself better than anybody, so write down a list of, these are the things I really liked about this community, these are the things I wish I had, and compare, and then, and make your decision, that way. But you have good resources here with myself, Katarina, Holly, and of course, our fearless leader, Terry. So thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Holly, do you have anything you want to add? You good?
Unless there's maybe two questions.
So let's open it up for questions. All right.
I have a question for Rick.
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
What is your advice for people who face the frustration of waiting lists at the facility?
Yeah, that's a great
Did
question.
everybody hear the question?
No.
So, advice for all the waiting lists for all the communities.
What I would say is, there's, we just created, when I got to Woodland, we didn't have a waiting list, and now we do. So we're going through this exact issue with people, and some of the things that we're trying to do is get people to be more, to invite them into the community some, so they get a feel for what it is. But I would say, first off, you gotta make sure you're safe in your current situation. So, make sure you've got, if you're at home, make sure you've got enough care where you're not gonna, as you look like a fit young man, so, you don't wanna risk something. So figure out maybe some care that you could get, somebody that could help you, but also stay engaged with the communities, because it does depend. Like it's hard to gauge how long a waiting list really is. That's something, the exercise that Holly and I are doing right now, because you look at the residents and, we have what's called hospice waivers. So does everybody kind of understand what hospice? So hospice is you basically, they're gonna typically say they have 6 months or less to live. That's not always the case. I've had hospice people that kept going on, and turned the corner, but that's typically what it means. And there's a whole Medicare based program where the agencies, the hospice agencies, have access to beds, for example, that are hospital beds, so they're easily operated. They have access to other equipment that helps you. But in terms of, make sure that, if there's a lot of those types of people on a list, obviously their time in the community may be, not as long as others, but, it's kind of a hard thing. We don't get too many people that just move out for, they only really move out if they need skilled nursing, or they pass away, or we did have a gentleman that moved out because he wanted to be back close to his family that didn't live in the area. So tricky. Yes.
Yeah, just wanted to get to the answer to that question about waiting list. Couple of things that came to mind. When you are feeling the frustration with waiting list, two things. Be proactive, because if you're looking into the retirement care communities, continuing care communities where you have all aspects of care, independent living, assisted living, skilled and memory such as summer camp, Valverde, etc., the path to get in is via independent living. So if you are needing to be or wanting to be placed there, the average waiting time in those communities are about 5 years or so. Considering they're the most expensive one, and they still have 5 years waiting list. So that ties into your timing in terms of planning. Another thing to keep in mind when you do waiting list is if you can be on the waiting list for more than one facility, right? So if you're not interested in CCRCs, larger continuing care communities, because of that waiting time, and because it's very expensive to get in, you have to pay quite substantial sum of money to get in, then it's not uncommon to be in the more than one waiting list. So for example, you could be putting your name with Woodland Hall while you do the waiting list at Moravia. Do that, because in most cases, even though you will get a deposit to be on the waiting list, in most cases this will be refundable deposit. But that will give you more options down the road when that time comes. And the third thing about the waiting list is to be proactive in terms of financial planning, right? That is just the cost of care in Santa Barbara is very, very expensive. If we go 30, 40 minutes up north, down south, it will be about 30% less expensive. And sometimes, it's unfortunate, but families outlive their resources and then reach out to us to see what are the more affordable communities outside of Santa Barbara. So to be proactive financially. So.
I have one more thing to add, and we talk about this all the time, is planning, okay? We have to plan. You have to go through Santa Barbara Senior Living Consultants with Peggy and Katarina. They will take you and talk with you about the different communities. So, waiting list, I know somebody told me the other day for Valverde was 6 years. So they put the deposit in, and I was over at their house talking about the things that they could do beforehand, but start planning now. even for 3 years, for 5 years, for 7 years, for 10 years down the line.
Thanks, Terry. Just something to add. So, like we're all saying, the communities with the longest wait lists are the continuing care communities with all the levels of care. But like Katarina said, your route into those is being on the waiting list and going through independent living. And so just one tip is, if you're on a wait list for one of those and they call you tomorrow and say, hey, guess what, we have a spot opened up in independent living, do you want it? And you go, well, no, I'm fine where I am right now, I'm not really ready, and you pass it. That might have been the only chance, because then the things start happening, like, somebody had falls or has some other type of medical situation, and now they call the place and say, okay, I'm ready to come now, but guess what? You're not suitable for independent living anymore, there's not a space available, so on and so forth, and that whole opportunity is missed. One other thought too, if you're on a wait list but feel like you really want to be somewhere in the meantime, you could come to more of a standalone place. Like our wait list is probably about 4 to 6 months. Some standalones would have no wait list and they have very low commitment. You're going to pay a very small entrance fee and then it's just monthly rent. So you could go to one and live there until your name comes up on the wait list for the community of your choice.
Great advice. Let me get some other people and then we'll come back to you, Frank. Okay? Back to the corner.
So I'm on the wait list for Vista Del Monte, and my understanding was if you pass up an apartment, they don't put you at the bottom of the list. You stay, you'll get called again.
So the question is, if they call you and you decline at that time, you don't fall to the bottom of the list. You just get knocked down and they should call you next.
So it depends on each community. In some communities, you are the next one still in line. In others, you go back to the bottom. It's an important question to ask, what would be your options? Another important thing to ask is, for example, you're on the waiting list, which is very hard for a 2-bedroom unit, and the 1-bedroom came available. And if you're ready, take the 1-bedroom, because then you will be on an internal waiting list within the community for 2-bedroom later.
And with regards to Vista Del Monte, I do know that are you on the waiting list for independent or assisted? Independent, okay, that's interesting. Because they have a lot more independent units actually than they have assisted. So sometimes that can be a little bit difficult to transition. The other thing you gotta ask is the price. These CCRCs, and I know that you've got a seminar coming up on CCRCs, but there's a lot of buy-in. For example, our community, we ask for 1 month's rent is our community fee, and there's standalone communities, or maybe they range from $2,000 up, but places that have CCRCs, a lot of them, they're very, very big buy-in, so that's something you have to be prepared for.
Just one thing I want to point out. I'm already on, I've been on a waiting list for 7 years, but I'm not ready, so then I'm on the list and I have to face that. The baby boomers are coming, so if you think you ever want to go to a place, an assisted living or independent living, go look at them now. Get on the list. Vista, I don't know what they're charging now. 7 years ago, it was $1,500 to be on the list. My understanding is that Valverde is $10,000 to be on the list. And that's only gonna go up as these baby boomers come up behind us. So, you talked about planning. Yes, it's about planning. Think ahead, do your research, and if you don't ever go to one, you do get your deposit back. But if you never get on the list until you're desperate to get in, the chances are you'll never get in.
Chances are you won't get in, but you can always get in somewhere if the need is critical, but it's not gonna be where you wanna be. So take charge of your own destiny. Hang on just a minute, Deanna.
I have not a question relating to the waiting list, but I have kind of a twofold question. I had a dear friend that was at your facility, and I loved it. I loved the coziness, the smalls. At that time, they did not accept hospice, and so you are, am I clear, and you are accepting hospice now? And
Yes.
then also to Katarina and both of you, because I'm very proactive about me, and I know what I want down the line. What is there, how are you in positions of having the doula or assisted dying in place at your facility? Will you allow it or not?
Against doula.
And are you asking, will death doulas come into a
Or
community?
the maids, having maids come in if you wanted to not continue on? Can they come into your facilities and do it?
The question is essentially, are you talking about assisted suicide?
Yes, through
Okay.
the maids.
That, I don't think we're gonna address that here.
Okay, I just didn't know. Because I didn't know.
As far as death doulas, I don't see why not, they wouldn't be allowed in the community, correct?
Right, and then the other statement I have to make is, in facilities, and I saying I love the 6-bed at home, because then, to me, I have control. But I think it's also a financial advantage, because it is a taxable write-off. And, for your family members to know that, is that not correct?
I've never heard that.
It's a
Let's-
medical write-off for your income tax.
Okay, so I don't mean to interrupt you. First off, let's stick to questions, things like that,
I just
let's
didn't know.
talk about after, and we're not tax people, so I try not to answer that. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, the San Marcan waiting list, they don't have an internal one anymore. In other words, when they offer you an apartment, what you agree to is what you're gonna stay in. They have abolished their internal list.
Okay, so that's, what she's saying is San Marcan has no external waiting list, what you sign up for is where you stay. So I'm not.
We just
Yeah.
went through it with them.
Right. So, every community has different rules and regulations. Every community has different policies, and that's why it's important that you visit. So if you're interested in a CCRC or a standalone, at the back of your packets, you have a sheet provided from Santa Barbara Senior Living Consultants that has a list of all the communities here in Santa Barbara, correct? So, call them up with Santa Barbara Senior Living Consultants, with Peggy. She can sit down and talk with you about the pros and cons of each one. I can't recommend enough that you give her a call, make an appointment, talk with her about which communities might be good for your personal situation, and then start visiting them. Whether it's Woodland, you can pretty much divide it up between standalones, 6 beds, and CCRCs. You know, once you understand the difference, and I'm happy to sit down and talk with you about the difference. Maybe you want to visit one of each. I don't know, do you allow visitors?
Yes.
Okay, 6 beds allow visitors. So, start now, start thinking about the different communities. Go online, read about them, make sure the licenses are up to date. There's all sorts of great information. Call me, we'll have a copy date. I can get you started, and then I turn you over to the professionals that really know what they're talking about when it comes down to the communities.
Yeah, I have a question about, you've got the independent and assisted living facilities, and there's a number of them that provide both services within the same community. So, you know, in our case, we have a sister who's currently in one, and we're looking at, as she's gotten healthier, as she's joined the community, you know, there's restrictions in certain cases of being able to leave the facility, for example, if you want to go walking. And so how does a facility, for example, just picking one out of the blue, she's not there, let's say Villa Santa Barbara. So it provides both assisted and independent living, but how do they manage the assisted living residents that may have some like cognitive impairment or something? How do you manage to service both of those populations in one place.
I don't know if I can summarize that whole thing, but Rick and Katerina are gonna address that, so if you'll include some of the question points in there.
So the question is, how do you address the needs of the residents who are located in both facility that offers independent and assisted living? And you gave example of Villa Santa Barbara, if they have, for example, dementia. That's the homework that is important to do before you tour. This is a great example. Villa Santa Barbara, they do not have dementia waiver. They do not have that. So if you are a resident that have dementia in your physician's report form, especially marking that you are under risk, you will not be appropriate for that community because they are right downtown Santa Barbara, across from courthouse, and they wander out. This is going to be a huge issue. And you cannot restrict the resident living in the facility. I'm not sure what's the situation with your sister, but it is again licensing rules and regs. This is part of residents' rights. Your sister should be able to go to the facility as long as they let the administrator know that she's going to be absent for the duration of time, and that's, for you to.
So kind of follow up to that then, when you're evaluating a potential resident, and we've gotten very familiar with the difference between, dementia and cognitive impairment and all the different levels of that. Do you look at that like as an assisted living potential? If someone comes in that is not actually, doesn't have dementia, but may have, some cognitive impairment, how do you evaluate that and determine if they're appropriate for your facility?
So the question is, how do we evaluate the process of admitting a resident into the facility, especially if they have a possibility of MCI versus dementia, cognitive impairment and dementia? A big part of that, and you'll see in the summary that I have prepared, that is a physician's report, 602 form. Because oftentimes when we have a family touring, sometimes they might not know or fully disclose that mom or dad is under risk. So that's why we need to have a physician's report stating if the person has dementia, the level of dementia, whether it's MCI or dementia, and then if they wander risk as part of the assessment process.
So wandering is the key word here.
Correct. And for that reason, there are some dedicated memory care facilities that have locked perimeters for those who are having a wander risk.
Yeah, she pretty much nailed that. Just kidding. The 602 is that's the first thing that we look at. I've been doing assessments myself, and that is the first thing that we look at. But then, are they a wanderer? And if so, then you have to have a routine. You need to make sure you know if they're leaving the community, and this is in a non-locked community. So as Katerina mentioned, in a memory care, you have an interlocking system so that people cannot just walk out. But if somebody that has mild cognitive impairment, and they do have a history of wandering, that's a high risk, and that's something that usually, as a community, we have to determine beforehand if they're going to be allowed in, and then afterwards, making sure they're signing out, and we know, what they're going to do, and we're in touch with their family, and the internal care team understands. Yeah, it's okay for them to go. They said they're going to go to lunch with their sister. They'll be back, and the front, and even all the way to the concierge at the front. Okay, you signed out, Diane. Okay, thank you. You'll be back at 2. So those kind of things are all key.
Thank you.
And Terry, is there not a big difference between LLC and CCR? LLC is Marvia run.
Okay, so that's a difference.
It's a different topic down the line, but
It's a different
it's
topic.
good to be aware of.
Essentially between profit, for-profit, and not-profit. We'll talk about that next time.
Good.
Okay, more questions? Yes.
So we spoke about 6-bed facilities. Woodland has how many available apartments, or how many people can live there?
So the question is, what's the capacity at Woodland for independent and assisted?
Yes, please.
I'll turn it over to the expert.
Okay, so we have 63 apartments at Woodglen, we do offer suites, and so right now we are full with 63 apartments are full, but 59 residents, meaning there's 4 residents that have suites that account for 2 apartments. And then your question regarding independent living and assisted living, we're one of the communities that we can bring the assisted living to you. In other words, the levels of care, no matter where you are in the community, if you suddenly need assistance with your ADLs, you know, assistance with your showers, assistance getting dressed in the morning, we'll bring that assistance to you. And this, you'll change, your level of care will change, and of course, your price will change, but your room wouldn't change. We would bring that to you.
That's good to know. Not all communities. If you have to switch over to assisted living, you actually have to change locations. So that's a great benefit of Woodline. I want to make sure, one second. I want to make sure everybody knows the 4 disciplines. Okay, we have independent living, which means you move in, you don't have to do your housework or maintain your house or do your own cooking sometimes. You have freedom to go wherever, you can have your car. You have assisted living. Everybody know what ADL means? Okay. Assisted, or activities of daily living, which means you need help doing your toileting or getting dressed or medication management. And there are several different levels of ADL. Then there's skilled nursing. When you're in the hospital, you break your hip, you have to go somewhere before you go back home. That's skilled nursing. And then memory care, dementia care. So CCRCs have all 4 levels. They're like Villa Santa Barbara is just assisted living, or do they have independent?
IL.
So there are some like the one out past Costco. Westmont, thank you. See, they're the experts. They have assisted living and then they have memory care. But they don't have skilled nursing, they don't have independent care. So depending on what your needs are, there are communities for everything. Okay, somebody, new question, Rodney.
Thank you for this, for the senior living consultants that gave this list. It's excellent. And my question is, I see on the back it says senior living in Ventura County is generally less expensive than Santa Barbara. And I wonder if anybody has anything that lists the ones that are in Ventura.
The question is, do we have information on Ventura senior living communities?
So we do work with the agency very similar to ours, senior living consultants that cover southern area of Ventura and further down south, and we can obtain that list from them. We just didn't want to branch out too far, but yes, there are there's a list of communities there, and currently we're also working, taking an eye on the senior care directory internally here with the list of all the additional resources beside the care facilities. So that hopefully would be
Great question. Hang on, Diana, to the back.
Yeah, what happens if people run out of their money after they're?
Okay, the question is, what happens if you run out of money? Who wants to take that?
It's a tough question, and we're going to be also doing the summary just for that, the affordable options, which are not many at all. As recent as just last night, I was writing an email back to the local conservator who is working with an elderly gentleman who has about 3 years of budget to care for him, but then in 3 years the funds will be depleted. So the conservator was asking what the options might be. So one thing that is interesting to mention is assisted living waiver program, if any of you have heard about it. It's a very cool program that is now introduced by the state. It's not quite still available in Santa Barbara, but we hope in a few years it will come here. But that is if you ran out of money and you qualified for medical, assisted living waiver program will allow you to stay in assisted living facility, not skilled nursing, but assisted living facility with medical covering your expense there. It's good to look up that, you can look it up online, assisted living waiver program. And it, yes, and I just summarized that whole thing last night as I was drafting that email, and it's a great summary through the Department of Social Services that will also give you the criteria, what will make you qualified. It's good to be proactive with that as well, because the average waiting time for assisted living waiver facilities currently is about 2 to 3 years. So if you get that in line, that way you'll have again, being proactive opens up options for you. So that would be one of the solutions to that.
I just know it's an interesting question because this, I posed this exact question to our board of directors, wondering as a nonprofit. And one of the things that they said was that we would work with people through our endowment if they were in our community for a long time and funds were running down, that we would work with them. And that, I don't know exactly what that means, but it did make me feel a lot better that we're not gonna we wouldn't, kick somebody out on the street, so, yes.
So I had an interview with Vista Del Monte, as I said, I'm on a waiting list. And I asked them, and they said, if you pay the larger amount, they have two options. Pay the big amount, which is big, close to 500,000. And you're living there for 5 years and you run out of money, they use that 500,000 to pay your rent and expenses, and if that gets depleted, they have a fund. And I heard there's 3 places like that in Santa Barbara, but I don't know the other 2.
So, you're talking about what's it called, the benevolent fund, right? If I can address this, because we're running out of time, so I want to make sure that we get to all the questions. Especially the CCRCs, one of the reasons they have such a high buy-in is that when you run out of money, they let you stay. It's called the benevolent fund. So the $500,000 or $380,000, or I have no idea what cost of rent it is, that helps fund that. Am I correct there?
Yes.
Okay. Frank, did you have one more thing?
Well, if I may, a quick follow-up question on the waiting list issue. Do you recommend that people not only get on a waiting list at maybe 1, but maybe 2, 3, or 4 facilities? And the reason that I ask that, because I've had the experience 2 different times with people who got on a waiting list for independent living. By the time that waiting list was clear, they had moved to an assisted living status. There was no opening in assisted living at the one place that they applied. Should people consider multiple waiting
yes.
list applications?
Yeah, Katerina spoke to that earlier. Consider multiple waiting list situations. You have to put down a deposit for most of them, but if you can do that, then why not? No, you had a question.
I just wanted to ask, how many skilled nursing facilities in the area are there?
Question is, how many skilled nursing communities or facilities are there?
So there are 5 skilled nursing facilities in Santa Barbara. If you are connected to CCRC, such as Summer Camp and Valverde, and then you have additional standalone, which is Mission Park, formerly called Mission Terrace, Buena Vista, California, and Channel Islands.
And what was
Channel Islands.
Buena Vista.
California, Hotel Laguna, and Channel Islands.
Okay, back to our Dennis.
You've got listed 8 different independent living communities. Can you just give me an idea? Which of the 8 are kind of the most expensive? Which of the 8 are kind of down towards the bottom?
Yeah, that's a big conversation. So, let's have coffee. And we can go through, I always pay for coffee. So, yeah, let's not, okay, Holly has one comment.
Just one comment from me, being the sales director, where I keep all the inquiries we get. Please please, if you're going to use a resource for, navigating through what all the options are, use a local resource like PEGI and Katarina, because if you reach out to the national ones that are very prevalent, very well advertised, you really won't learn anything new. The person you talk to on the phone has probably never even been to Santa Barbara. They've never set foot in any of the communities. They're just looking in their database and telling you some names, and then they're gonna call you a lot too. So if you talk to Peggy and Katarina, which like she said is free, they have been doing this for so long. They know all the Santa Barbara communities, and we have a really special community since Santa Barbara is, relatively small. You want people who know what they're doing.
Okay, I can say it, do not use a place for home. Because it's a clearinghouse. It's a clearinghouse, they put you on the mailing list, they call you, they're not local experts, just don't do it. I don't know a clever way to say that. Okay, we have 5 minutes.